What's up, guys? This is Bulva the Fell-Handed. After the massive success of the weak spot guides for the IS-7, IS-4, I have had a request for the weak spot guide to the Moss. Now, we're going to do something a little different this time. I'm going to go over modules to kind of explain what's where, what you need to shoot. Granted, of course, you have to get through the armor and you have to actually damage the module. That's a whole different thing. I'm not going to get into that. That's very mechanic heavy. But okay, guys, let's get right to it. This is a fuel tank. There are two on the front of the tank. They are right near the headlights here. I am now demonstrating the other fuel tank. Next up is the driver. The driver is in a vertical position right where I'm outlining right here. To his left is the radio operator in the same vertical position. They sit side by side in the tank. To the left of the radio operator is his radio equipment. Moving on from that, it would not be Bulva the Fell-Handed if I did not get everything, and this is the gun, obviously. Here you have your primary viewport, and to the left of that you have your secondary viewport. I would not go for these as they're a little tricky to penetrate. Moving on, you are going to have your gunner to the right of the turret there, noted by the vertical vision slit, and to the left the commander of the tank. Okay, guys, modules on the side of the tank. We have the fuel tank right here, which I'm noting. This is the engine location. You have a band of engine as well as another strip worth of engine, if you will, right on top of the road wheels here, and it hooks up to the drive wheel in the back and more or less follows the form of the armor on the back there. So everywhere you see the reticle, more or less is going to be engine. Now, this tank is large and it has a very large magazine. This is going to be your ammo rack location, and you have another large ammo rack location right here on the turret itself. Also keep in mind that your gunner is setting on this side of the vehicle, so be aware of that as well. Okay, guys, moving on to the rear of the tank. More or less the entire rear hull of the tank is nothing but engine. This is a 188-ton tank. It needs a large engine to make it move. This is the ammo rack on both sides of the turret. Angled, you're going to have that, and the loader sets in the middle of the tank here. Okay, guys, enough of modules and crew. We are now going to move to the frontal weak spots of the Tier 10 Moss heavy tank. Okay, guys, so I'm going to focus on the license plate area. You're going to hear me refer to that multiple times. It is 200 millimeters of armor sloped at a mere 35-degree angle, giving you 244 millimeters of effective armor protection. It's extremely strong, although it's not that strong in a Tier 10 lobby. I'm firing numerous APCR rounds into it, and I am being successful. We don't even have to switch to the heat rounds as of yet. Now, the location that I'm firing now, the track guards, are a very easy penetration as they go straight through and damage the track. The big beast of this tank is the upper plate, weighing in at 200 millimeters thick, although this plate is sloped at 55 degrees, bringing us to 349 millimeters of effective armor unangled. Now, when I load a heat round, I penetrate it, and what I'm doing here, guys, is I fire multiple heat rounds in this location on the upper plate to see if it was a fluke. Right there it is, or I can do it by design. And trust me when I say it was a fluke, because I flatten a lot of silver against the front of this tank in the name of science. I cannot penetrate this thing anymore, even in the same exact spot. So this is a prime example of just a lucky high roll with my penetration roll. And of course, if you guys watched any of my other videos, this is some of the magic that happens behind the scenes. Rolls that we don't even know that are, the system is making. Your penetration rolls, your damage rolls, things like that are fluid. Okay guys, the things I'm going to shoot next, say if you put your reticle over them that you can in fact penetrate them, but unfortunately they are no hitboxes. The round goes nowhere, it does nothing, so I would not necessarily concern yourself with firing upon these, because it will end in tears. You don't really do anything. Now you can fire on the viewport. It doesn't really have the effect I believe you thought it would. That's why my suggestion is to focus on things that you can actually damage. For example, the round turret cheeks. The area I'm firing at now varies from 270 to 290, 300 millimeters effective, and as you go down, the effectiveness dwindles to 275, to the very lowest being 261 millimeters of protection. And as you see, I penetrated that one with a standard APCR round, as well as the lower one, which even goes up to 289, 290 millimeters of protection. And what this is, guys, is the Leopard is stated to have 268 millimeters of penetration, but of course that's average. So what I'm doing here to penetrate this, guys, is I am doing high penetration rolls, and that essentially is what is getting me through this extremely tough turret armor. Now of course, if you load heat rounds, you are going to go through this as long as you aim near the center, much like I was doing on the other side, so it will work either way. Okay guys, let's move on to angled weak spots. Now I have to be honest, there's not a whole lot. If you angle this tank just like in the picture, you will be nearly invincible. 35 degrees is the magic number for you Moss operators out there. The tank is almost invincible. Right now, you fire at the lower plate, you are not looking at a very high chance to penetrate. Of course, you can still fire on the left and right of the track guards there, and yes, that is perfectly fine. You can possibly pull that off and track him. Moss drivers primarily stay tracked all the time. The upper plate is going to go to a ridiculous number. It was already pretty ridiculous where it's at. Now, there is a weak spot. However, this flat piece of armor, it was angled when you're facing it straight on, but when you angle up, it is now flat. So, my IS destroyers, my constant viewers, this is the doom of the Moss tank. You fire at this flat piece of armor, no matter what his turret is angled at. As long as you can hit this hole, you will destroy him. Now, the reason I had this gentleman position his Moss like this is you have seen countless Moss, when they are side scraping, position themselves like this, their turret looking away from you, and once it's loaded it turns back towards you. Alas, there is another weak spot of the Moss tank in the turret, just like it is positioned right now. I will show it to you momentarily. I just want to prove for a fact it is impossible to shoot the side of this tank and penetrate it. Now I am going to just shoot the side of the turret here, or the front of the turret at an angle, excuse me. Now, watch what happens next. Penetration. You can angle your rounds through the side of the mantlet. Now, keep in mind, I was only running a PCR. If you run heat, your chances of course go up exponentially. Not using heat, I am just using APCR to show you, to demonstrate to you exactly what will happen if a Moss is angled at 35 degrees which is almost sideways. Let's be honest. 45 degrees, you know, you saw on the IS-4 was him over angle. Well, the Moss works to where you can almost end up pushing this tank sideways. Now we have a heat round loaded. We are going for the license plate, and we penetrate it. So we know that the heat rounds push us over the envelope to where yes, you can penetrate. Not having a lot of luck. Let's try my constant viewer's weak spot. Boom, it goes right through. As long as your mediums and heavies run their hot rounds, your APCR for your heavies, your heat, what have you, you can penetrate the side of this tank. It is not easy. If he is at less of a steep angle and the front end is covered, things are going to get exponentially harder for you. You can always use the mantlet weak spot that I've showed you to go through the mantlet if he is looking away from you. So just keep that in mind. You always have options when you're facing a Moss in combat. Moving on. There's not much need, but it would not be Bull by the Fell-Handed if I did not go over every single angle of this tank, and I shall do so. The side weak spots. Keep in mind you are firing at a 185mm thick slab of armor with little to no angle. The turret slightly more thick than the armor we are shooting at currently. With your basic 268mm of penetration of the Leopard 1, you should have little to no trouble going through this. You even have the low penetration of an E100 at 235mm will go through the side of this as well with ease. So if you are a Moss operator, I urge you, do not give anyone free side shots because they will penetrate your tank quite readily. Now you will see I do focus on the particularly thick side of the turret, and it goes through like nobody's business. So Moss operators, be cautious about the side. Okay, let's go to rear weak spots. The upper glacis of the rear of your tank is 160mm thick, and we are sloped at a 36-degree angle, bringing us to 198mm of protection and easy penetration no matter whom you are. The lower plate there, I guess we would call it the lower license plate or the rear license plate, is 160mm thick, and it is sloped at about a 31-degree angle, bringing us to 185-190mm of protection. Also an easy shot once you're in a tier 10. Even an E100 could do it, which has more or less a tier 8 penetration value of a gun. Now, the rear of the turret is a bit thicker. It's standard 210mm, sloped at merely a 14-degree angle, bringing the grand total to 216mm of protection. So the only thing I can see you bouncing off of is if the operator angles the turret of the rear tank, and possibly you fire at the turret and it bounces. So be safe, go for the hole. Guys, I hope you enjoyed my weak spot guide to the Moss. Now that I've added modules and crew, that way you can find out or be aware of what's behind what you're shooting. So Moss operators, please use this to your own edification and protect those weak spots.